All right. This takes us to our second special order of the day, which is a State of the City address that both the city manager and I have, we've prepared independent comments for that we gave at the Chamber of Commerce luncheon. So at this point, I'll leave the dais and I'll go to the podium and give my talk. And, well, I'll just do that. Thanks. Yeah, thank you. So as I mentioned, the Chamber asked me to speak on a couple of different items, which I will respond to, and then I also went on with some musings and other things that were on my mind that you'll hear tonight as well. So the first is measures U and V. Emeryville voters approved 2 citywide measures last November. The purpose of these tandem measures was to raise revenue. The first establishes Emeryville as a charter city. In California, there are 2 types of cities, general law or charter cities. General law cities follow the general laws of the state of California, and charter cities draft their own charters, which can act like constitutions for the governance of the city. We passed a very basic charter that states essentially we follow the general laws of the state of California except when it comes to taxation. Measure V allows the city to collect real estate transfer tax whenever properties are sold. As a general law city, we collected 55 cents per $1,000 in property valuation for every real property sale. Voters raised that to $12 per $1,000 in valuation. And this measure will greatly enhance the city's ability to raise revenue that is badly needed since redevelopment was eliminated in 2012, and it essentially cut our overall budget in half. 2 notable sales closed in late 2014. If the Towers office complex had been subject to the transfer tax, the city would have gained about $3 million for our general fund. And the second sale was the sale of Bay Street Shopping Center, which would have yielded about $3.4 million for the general fund. So that's the kind of revenue we can expect in the future from large commercial sales. There was no other change in the governance of the city or its structure. We still have a city council manager form of government, and we still have 5 council members. And I want to thank the voters of Emeryville as well as the Chamber of Commerce for supporting both measures. We can accomplish much more by working cooperatively together than we can if we're at cross purposes. And tonight I'll just deviate a little bit from my prepared comments to say that I alerted the Chamber of Commerce to the fact that we're on the path to raising the minimum wage, and with a suggested rate which is equal to our living wage ordinance. We have a city living wage ordinance that was passed in 2006, which pertains to contractors that do business with the city of Emeryville, as well as for city employees. And it's adjusted every July by the Consumer Price Index. And we're looking at what our neighbors have done, including Lift Up Oakland and with a paid sick leave provision. And there's some other things that need to be discussed before we adopt this. We want to have the minimum wage take effect as early as July 1st. Don't know if that'll actually happen, but we're on a fast track. Secondly, the Chamber asked me in the State of the City to talk about spillover from Silicon Valley and San Francisco. And we all know that there are skyrocketing commercial rental costs, and there are businesses that are moving to the East Bay, along with a concomitant flood of people seeking more affordable housing in the East Bay than in the city or in Silicon Valley. So I was asked at the chamber luncheon to address whether we're positioned to capture this spillover, and I said enthusiastically and unequivocally yes, and I'll talk about why. I met with the chamber CEO who's just retired, and he said that he said employees want amenities near where they work, places to go have a drink after work, and interesting places to frequent. And not surprisingly, residents want amenities too, so there is an inherent synergy in creating a more livable community that also makes for a more viable and vibrant business environment. When I was first elected to the City Council, I didn't understand this synergy and symbiosis, and I thought there was I believed in the false dichotomy between residents and businesses, and 15 years later, I understand that quite differently now. The city is one city, and our interests are inextricably linked to each other. We will never be a smaller version of San Francisco or Silicon Valley, and I think that we are a bohemian version of a great place to do business. And I want to give some examples of that. And again, in the context of the chamber luncheon in which I gave this, I apologized if I didn't name particular businesses. So if anybody listening to this tonight feels slighted, please don't. I apologize. I didn't mean to be exhaustive in my list. But the first thing that makes us a great place to do business is the annual celebration of the arts. It's an early and ongoing example of honoring the talents of those who live and work in Emeryville. And it is the single best attended event by the adult community all year, and it really speaks to our creativity and innovation in art that we have in this city. Second, I directed a friend to get a cup of coffee within walking distance of my house. So she went to Ruby's Cafe, and she came back saying it reminded her of cafes in Soho. Am I not being heard?
No, it's fine.
Okay. They're going to move the mic on me or something. All right. When Rudy's Can't Fail Cafe opened, it arrived with its own following, and it was so successful, it opened a second restaurant in Oakland. And taking a nod from our history, we have Rotten City Pizza. We also have other small establishments that appeal to an after-hours crowd. Prizefighter Bar is packed. Honor Bar is known for great bar food. We have Broken Rack, various gyms and health or fitness centers, and other small businesses that have found Emeryville desirable. And so I think we already have small business amenities that are important to today's workforce as well as to the residents. We were discovered in terms of this Silicon Valley San Francisco spillover when another trend exploded on our city's streets, and that was the influx of gourmet food trucks. Those operators knew we had a small gold mine amongst our daytime population, and they came in droves. We established a task force to work out friction points between mobile food operators and our brick and mortar restaurants. Off the Grid, which is an umbrella organization that organizes food trucks, saw us as an untapped resource and came. Now they're at the public market regularly while the market's undergoing upgrades. And I ate there off of a truck over Martin Luther King weekend, and someone thanked me for having the food trucks there. I'm certainly not the person to thank, but I'm glad this is now part of the Emeryville scene. And again, in the context of the chamber luncheon, I spoke a bit about our excellent business position that Google noticed because they named us the e-capital of California. The city manager, Sabrina Landreth, will be talking more about that. And a third example of our business vitality, I want to mention the biotech biomed corridor that includes Emeryville and West Berkeley. And a few weeks ago, I greeted a Bay Bio meetup, and I saw 4 young adults sitting at a small table, kind of by themselves. So I went over to talk to them and ask them why they came to the meetup, and they all came from the peninsula. They were all working, but they wanted to check this out. And I think that speaks volumes about people in Silicon Valley already coming to Emeryville to check out fresh opportunities that might await them. So we already are a bohemian version of up-and-coming business, and we need to be observant to what trends will next emerge and to encourage more entrepreneurial endeavors. So as I did at the Chamber Luncheon, tonight I want to say that I want to invite anybody here who has a glimmer in their imagination to start branding Emeryville as this bohemian place. And I look to our bigger neighbor, and I've watched the private sector lay claim to all things Oaklandish with T-shirts that read "I Hella Heart Oakland" and distinctive tree designs on caps and shirts. So I think it's time for us to market our unique history and character by promoting Mudflat Java or the Metalworks Gallery, and you get the idea. So I also want to take a little license here, because this is the 4th time I'm serving as mayor, and I find myself holding important pieces of institutional memory that fewer council members and city staff have now. And this is very timely. It's kind of like double bellwether from what I said then, because well, anyway, I'll talk about this. But when I first campaigned in '99, I put out a vision of autonomous neighborhood councils in which neighbors would meet, discuss their own neighborhood issues, try to resolve them, and come to the city with their proposed solutions as necessary. I wanted to develop a relational infrastructure. And it remains my belief that urban safety comes when we are connected to each other, when we support each other, and when we're generally mindful of each other. And at the time, my campaign was a bellwether of things to come, although I had no idea that the neighbors would organize themselves electronically. First, there was Doyle Street Neighbors, who developed an email network spurred on by the redesign of Doyle Street into the Greenway, and then later into the park there. The Triangle neighborhood had a email distribution list. PANA had a, Park Avenue Neighborhood Association had a list, and other areas also organized themselves into communicating together. And it's a kind of, I don't know if it's ironic or I don't know exactly how to describe it, but tonight on our council agenda, we're going to be discussing how people can do just this. And I don't think when this was prepared, they were looking at my 1999 campaign piece. So what can I say? It comes back around. And so 15 years ago, as a rookie council member, I saw lots of things that needed changing. And I am heartened to see ways that Emeryville has matured as a city, and I want to spend a little time talking about that. There are numerous internal organizational changes that most people are never aware of. And a few city managers ago, I asked about having Parks and Rec combined, and that included a Citizens Parks and Recreation Committee. And his response was at the time that Public Works can just take care of the parks. And now we have an advisory Parks and Rec Committee. We also have a newer committee is an Economic Development Advisory Committee. Again, later tonight, we're going to be talking about how we're going to be considering about redoing all of our committee structures, but again, it's just an example of how we're continuing to mature as a city. It really speaks to how our citizens are active and engaged, and how easy it is to become involved in the city if someone wants to. We've learned more about maintaining and strengthening our public infrastructure, which too many people take for granted. We learned the hard way about how to grow street trees. I don't mean to pick on Public Works here, but when you buy a bunch of trees and they die, it's like that's a problem. So we're doing better at that. And the city manager in her remarks will talk more in much more detail, department by department, about the ways that what we've accomplished and how we've grown as a city. So future goals to help in the maturation of the city include improving broadband access, the implementation of the Center for Community Life, which will really thrust us into the next phase of being a full service community, and using new tools to modernize city service delivery. And I want to give, I think Rob Arias is still in the audience, and I mentioned See Click Fix, and I'll give him a nod because he was talking about us taking that on. So thank you, Rob. And we will continue with other quality of life amenities, such as the further completion of the Greenway. And tonight, as I did at the Chamber luncheon, I want to close my comments about talking about climate change. And just as I spoke earlier about relational infrastructure and public safety, so too I think we can apply the same principles to ensuring the survival of our species and as many other species as possible. Right now, the Earth is facing tremendous damage. Many species are becoming extinct. We may not be aware of this as urban dwellers, yet our school district tells us our zip code has the highest childhood asthma rate in the county, triggered in no small part by particulates emitted from the port and highways. So we know we're sick and getting sicker as a whole environment together. So what would it take for us to become more aware of the damage around us and to act against it? We must act as though we are all connected to one another. We must notice we're part of the environment. We must notice that we matter and we can make a difference. And from the carelessness of a dropped wrapper or cigarette butt on the sidewalk to numerous car trips we take as solo drivers, all of these actions belie our disconnection from the world around us. 40% of our air pollution in Alameda County is from transportation. The other major source of pollution is from buildings and the energy that they use. And we humans must radically and fundamentally change how we do business if we want our world to survive. Emeryville drafted a climate action plan, which is being revisited by staff and will be brought to council later this spring. Our plan is to cut greenhouse gas emissions by 25%. From 2004 levels by 2020. We've installed solar panels on City Hall. The city has taken other actions towards mitigating our impacts through stormwater treatment, creating a more walkable city, installing bay-friendly landscape, and serving as a pilot site for hydrogen fuel cell cars. And I don't think there's a Chamber of Commerce rep here tonight, excuse me if I'm wrong, but I did thank them for championing becoming green certified business, and we have 25 green certified businesses in town. All this is good, necessary, and it's too little. Development projects discuss impacts and mitigation measures. We must begin to talk about environmental restoration, habitat creation, not just about mitigating impacts. We cannot have business as usual. We must transform how we do business. We will not solve this crisis on a project-by-project basis, and more importantly, we must act as connected communities in order to address this crisis. Our city has been divided by economics, railroad tracks, and highways, and it's time to bridge the gaps. We must be intra and interconnected communities to address this crisis. And I close my comments to the Chamber by talking a bit about my work on the Regional County Transportation Commission. We put a successful ballot measure on the November ballot, which raises sales tax for transportation projects to a penny for the next 30 years. The expenditure plan associated with this tax measure calls for 48% of all funds off the top to go to public transit, and it increases the pot from 5 to 8% for bike and pedestrian projects, as well as enlarging the overall pot from a half a penny to a penny. So the shifting priorities towards public transportation and what is called active transportation are also necessary steps to de-emphasize solo driving and incentivize other ways of getting around. I am very honored to represent Emeryville on the Transportation Commission and am very inspired by the work of the Commission. 3 plans are in development that together address the pressing needs to reduce transportation-related emissions. The 3 plans are a goods movement plan, an arterial plan, and a transit plan. And I'll be happy to report on these plans as they move through future development. And at the state level, there's California Senate Bill 375, which mandates a sustainable community strategy and to plan for future development, which MTC calls One Bay Area. And this is a regional planning effort that recognizes we're all in this together. The NOAA, the Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration, projects more than 30 days a year in nuisance flooding along coastal areas by 2050, and already it's happening on the eastern seaboard. And we haven't begun to plan for protecting our shoreline. What will we give back to the bay, and what will we try to protect through levees and dikes? This isn't even on our CIP, and I think we need to start thinking about it. We can't legislate ourselves to a sustainable world. We're trying, but government almost by definition does too little too late. And perhaps at the community level, joining together, we may just be able to turn the tide on the Earth's destruction and give it time to heal. So I'm closing with a bit of a call to action for there's never been a more pressing time for groups, coalitions, and communities, however people can define themselves as a community, to come together towards this common purpose. And I'll be happy and know that we're succeeding when people care enough about themselves and their environment that I don't see young people dropping candy wrappers in front of my home, and I don't see people stepping on cigarette butts and leaving them on the ground, and when I see major polluters held accountable for their damage. So with that bit of a clarion call, I thank you for your time tonight, and I'll turn it over to the city manager, who's actually going to tell you more about the city workings. So thank you.